to say the Pledge of Allegiance and the committee will now come to order and a quorum is present. Before I get into my comments, I would like to say it's going to be a busy day. We're going to have members from both sides of the aisle coming to and from the Small Business Committee. So just be aware that there'll be comings and goings of members. So, without objection, the chair is authorized to declare a recess of the committee at any time. As required by House rules, a copy of the legislation measures have been made available to members and the public at least 24 hours in advance. Pursuant to Committee Rule 13 and House Rule 11, all votes will be rolled to the end of the meeting. Without objection, the committee will vote electronically in accordance with committee rules and regulations developed by the House Committees on Rules and Administration. Before recognizing myself for opening remarks, I want to pass along a brief message from Chairman Williams, who could not be here today due to a family matter. He is very proud of the progress made by this committee this year, especially the 5 bills being considered today. The chairman urges support of all 5 bills for consideration today and looks forward to this committee continuing its great work for the American people. And I'll recognize myself for an opening remarks. Today, we will mark up 5 important bills that support small businesses across America. These bills will revitalize American manufacturing, support rural entrepreneurs, protect taxpayers' dollars, and hold fraudsters accountable. Small businesses are vital to the American economy. Under President Trump's leadership, small business optimism is at an all-time high. And that didn't happen by accident. It happened because we are cutting taxes, reducing burdensome regulations, and ensuring entrepreneurs have the freedom to grow. These bills build on all that momentum. This committee is dedicated to unleashing American manufacturing, strengthening our domestic supply chains, and keeping investment in good-paying jobs at home rather than overseas. These bills reflect those same commitments. We will meet the needs of small American manufacturers, encourage greater private investment into critical technologies, and reinforce support for rural entrepreneurs. Additionally, these bills hold fraudsters accountable to preserve taxpayer trust. Members of this committee on both sides of the aisle have been working tirelessly to get these bills to where they are today. I look forward to working with my colleagues so we can continue to pass meaningful legislation that empowers small businesses and strengthens our communities. With that, I look forward to today's markup and yield to the distinguished ranking member from New York, Ms. Velasquez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this markup to discuss policies that will strengthen the services SBA provides to America's 35 million small businesses. Today, we will consider 4 bipartisan bills negotiated in good faith and in the spirit of collaboration. First, the Investing in All of America Act of 2025, as amended, will give small business investment companies, or SBICs, additional leverage when they invest in small businesses in rural or underserved communities, small manufacturers, or small businesses critical to our national security. Second, the Office of Rural Affairs Enhancement Act will empower the SBA's Office of Rural Affairs by elevating its leader's role to that of an assistant administrator and requiring the office to host webinars and outreach events. Third, the SBA Fraud Enforcement Extension Act would hold fraudsters accountable for exploiting pandemic relief programs intended for America's small restaurants and performance venues by extending the statute of limitation for fraud offenses. And fourth, the SBA IT Modernization Reform Act of 2025 would require the SBA to implement 11 recommendations made by the Government Accountability Office to reform future IT modernization projects. These four bills make common sense policy changes that will meaningfully make the SBA a stronger resource for small businesses across the country. I am proud to support them, and I thank my colleagues on both sides of the aisle for their hard work and thoughtful discussion to get these bills to a good place. Unfortunately, we were not able to reach an agreement on the Made in America Manufacturing Finance of 2025. On the surface, the idea may sound good, but with any bill, you must get past the message and do the due diligence on the policy. However, I am not ruling out further negotiations over the summer, provided you work with us to raise loan limits for small manufacturers in a way that maintains the integrity of SBA lending programs and protects taxpayers' dollars. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you very much. Does any other member seek recognition for the purpose of making an opening statement? Seeing none, we will now move to consideration of the first bill. Consideration of H.R. 2066, Investing in All of America Act of 2025. The committee now moves to consideration of H.R. 2066, the Investing in All of America Act of 2025, introduced by Representative Muser and Schlotman. The clerk will report the bill.
H.R. 2066, a bill to amend...
Without
the small
objection,
business-
H.R. 2066 is considered as read and open for amendment. The bill sponsor, Mr. Muser, has an amendment in the nature of a substitute at the desk. The amendment has been distributed in advance. The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 2066, offered by Mr. Muser.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and the substitute will be considered as base text for the purpose of further amendment. I now recognize the bill's sponsor, Mr. Muser, for a statement on the bill and the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My bipartisan legislation, H.R. 2066, the Investing in All of America Act, would incentivize small business investment companies, SBICs, to deploy additional capital to small businesses located in rural or low-income areas, as well as small businesses in manufacturing and national security technology sectors. SBICs are privately owned and managed investment funds that are licensed and regulated by the SBA. These companies raise private capital, which is then matched with SBA guaranteed leverage. SBICs invest both their private capital and SBA leverage into qualifying small businesses in communities across the country. Importantly, the SBIC program operates at zero subsidy cost to the American taxpayer. Over the past 2 decades, SBIC-backed businesses have created 3 million new jobs and supported an additional 10.5 million jobs over the last 2 decades. Over the last 5 years, SBICs invested over $130 billion in small businesses across America, including $1.3 billion in my home state of Pennsylvania. Though the SBIC program is successful, recent studies have shown that less than 20% of SBIC investments reaches low to middle income communities, especially rural ones. The Investing in All of America Act encourages private capital investments in parts of America that are often overlooked by not counting dollars invested in these areas against individual SBIC's leverage cap. It's important to note that the bonus leverage included in this legislation does not change the cost or the risks of the SBIC program. The existing model operates at no cost to the taxpayer, and this will remain the same. The Trump administration, SBA Administrator Kelly Loeffler, are focused on fueling small business growth and reinvigorating domestic manufacturing throughout the United States. This legislation supports that effort by encouraging increased private investment in the manufacturing sector. By expanding access to capital and reducing barriers to entry, this legislation helps manufacturers scale operations and create high-quality American jobs. Before I can conclude, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask unanimous consent to insert a letter into the record from the Small Business Investor Alliance in support of this legislation.
Without objection.
Thank you. I would also like to thank Representative Skolkin for her partnership on this legislation and the bipartisan group of members who have co-sponsored it. I'd also like to thank Chairman Williams for bringing this bill forward for consideration today. This legislation will have the tangible positive impacts we plan for them to have for our communities. A similar version of this legislation passed this committee and House unanimously last Congress. So I encourage my colleagues to support this legislation. And, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
And I'll recognize the bill's co-sponsor, Ms. Skolton, for a statement on the bill and the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am so proud to speak on my bill, the Investing in All of America Act, which I'm so proud to co-sponsor with Mr. Musser. Michigan is home to almost 1 million small businesses. That's 99.6% of all privately owned businesses in the state. On any given day, the issue of access to capital is among the greatest challenges for our small businesses. For low-income or rural communities and small manufacturers, this issue hits even closer to home. Recent studies have shown that less than 20% of small business investment companies, their funds, are reaching these communities. For a program with a long history of success, this disparity is unacceptable, and it is incumbent upon us in this committee to remedy the program so it serves small businesses in every corner of our country. That is why I am so proud to lead the Investing in All of America Act, which would incentivize the deployment of additional capital to the communities and small manufacturers that need it most. Simply put, this bill would exclude certain amounts of leverage invested in these businesses from the SBIC's leverage cap. This bill will enable further support for small businesses in underserved communities, in addition to small manufacturers and other businesses in critical manufacturing sectors. This bipartisan solution would bolster the SBIC's program's success as a zero-subsidy, public-private partnership by encouraging investments in rural areas and industries that are vital to the nation's defense, both here in West Michigan and across the country. It is critical that these businesses can get the investment they need to continue growing our economy. I strongly urge members to vote yes on this important legislation. Thank you, Chair. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you. Are there any other members who wish to be recognized for a statement on the bill? Seeing none, I would now like to recognize the ranking member to speak on the bill and the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Stover, and thank you to Representatives Musser and Skolton for your bipartisan leadership on this bill. H.R. 2066 makes statutory improvements to the SBIC program to provide SBICs with access to additional leverage when they invest in certain sectors. Due to their often capital-intensive nature and early revenue profile, small businesses operating in America's critical technology sector need institutional investors with longer-term time horizons to raise capital. Yet, due to statutory constraints, these investors are often limited in their ability to participate in the SBIC program. By providing SBICs with additional leverage flexibility, H.R. 2066 more appropriately matches the SBIC program with the capital needs for America's small businesses in critical sectors. This alignment will enable the SBA and Defense Department to continue to successfully carry out their joint SBIC Critical Technology Initiative. And by providing SBICs with additional bonus leverage, we are encouraging investment in small businesses in our communities that need it the most. I again want to thank both Representative Musser and Skolton for their leadership on this issue. I also want to thank Chairman Williams and his team for their collaboration on technical edits to this bill. I believe through the effort of all parties, we have gotten this bill to a good place. I'm proud to support it and encourage members to vote yes. I yield back.
Thank you. I now recognize myself to speak in support of this legislation for 5 minutes. One of the most significant barriers to economic growth across our country is the lack of access to capital for small businesses. While some regions and industries are flush with investment, too many small businesses struggle to secure the funding they need to grow. H.R. 2066, the Investing in All of America Act, is a bipartisan common sense bill that strengthens one of the federal government's most successful public-private partnerships, the Small Business Investment Company Program, or SBIC. This program was created to unlock private capital and fuel small business growth. SBICs are privately managed investment funds licensed and regulated by the SBA. The SBA provides government-guaranteed funding to qualified SBICs to increase investments in small businesses. This bill would further strengthen the SBIC program by encouraging investments in rural areas, American manufacturing, and critical national security technologies. Additionally, this bill directs no new spending and mandates, allowing the program to continue operating at zero cost to the taxpayer. With these improvements, SBICs could unleash nearly $20 billion into American small businesses, expand operations, and drive job creation across America. I urge my colleagues to vote yes on H.R. 2066, and I yield back. Does anyone wish to offer an amendment? If none, seeing none, the question now occurs on the adoption of the substitute amendment offered to H.R. 2066 by Mr. Muser. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 2066 is adopted. The question is now on favorably reporting H.R. 2066 as amended to the House. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and H.R. 2066 is agreed to. Yes. For what purpose does the gentleman seek recognition?
I'd like to request a recorded vote.
A recorded vote has been requested. A roll call vote is ordered. Pursuant to Committee Rule 13 and House Rule 11, further proceedings on the bill are postponed. The committee now moves to consideration of H.R. 4549, the Office of Rural Affairs Enhancement Act, introduced by Representatives Goodlander and Weed. The clerk will report the bill.
H.R. 4549, a bill to
Without
amend.
objection, H.R. 4549 is considered as read and open for amendment. I now recognize the sponsor of the bill, Mrs. Goodlander, for a statement on the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ranking Member Velasquez, thank you for the opportunity to speak about this bill. I'm very proud to sponsor the Office of Rural Affairs Enhancement Act. This is a bipartisan, common sense bill that's going to ensure the voices of rural America aren't just heard, but they are prioritized within the Small Business Administration. Look, this bill comes directly from conversations that I've had with rural small businesses all across my home state, New Hampshire. Everywhere I go, from Chesterfield to Colebrook, I hear the same basic thing from so many small rural businesses, that federal programs designed to help them are simply not tailored to their needs, and even more often, they fail to be able to reach them at all. I've heard this from farmers in Loudoun as recently as Saturday, from retailers in Lisbon, small manufacturing businesses in Swansea, and loggers in West Stewartstown. 35 years ago, in 1990, the Office of Rural Affairs was created to address this precise set of problems. But what we've seen over the last 35 years is that this office has underperformed, it's been chronically understaffed and under-resourced. It needs clear direction, it needs stronger tools to really be able to do what we all want to do, which is to deliver for our rural small businesses, and that's exactly what our bill aims to do. It ensures that the office is led by someone with direct experience in rural economic development. This is a big core pillar, which is accountability. It requires annual reporting to Congress, which is going to be very valuable reporting that will help us track and keep this office accountable with respect to impact and improvement. And it's also going to improve access. This bill mandates regular outreach to small businesses in meaningful ways that are going to ensure that the Small Business Administration is meeting small businesses in rural America precisely where they are. So this bill is about accountability, it's about access, and above all, it is about basic fairness. Basic fairness for rural America's entrepreneurs and small businesses who are far too often forgotten, who have been unheard for far too long and who have so much to offer our great country. So in passing this bill, we would be saying clearly to our rural small businesses, we see you, we hear you, and we are fighting for you. So I urge all of my colleagues to join me in supporting the Office of Rural Affairs Enhancement Act. And I want to thank my colleague from the great state of Wisconsin, Tony Weed, for partnering with me in this bipartisan effort. And with that, I yield back.
Are there any other members who wish to be recognized for a statement on the bill? Seeing none, I would like to recognize the ranking member to speak on the bill and amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am pleased to support legislation to enhance the Office of Rural Affairs, and I commend Ms. Goodlander, Mr. Weed, and Mr. Golden for their commitment to making this office operate more effectively for rural small businesses. In 2019, Mr. Golden, as a former member of the Small Business Committee, raised this as one of his top priorities for the committee. Because the office has been largely vacant for 15 years, he worked to ensure resources were devoted to the office. Similar legislation was approved by the committee in the last Congress. I am delighted that Ms. Goodlander is championing it this Congress. Rural small businesses are powerful drivers of economic growth across the country, fueling the agriculture, tourism, manufacturing, and energy sectors. Yet, they receive disproportionately fewer SBA loans and resources than their urban counterparts. In FY 2025, only 16% of 7A loans and 13% of 504 loans got to rural areas. So today, we are sending a message to 7A lenders and 504 companies that rural America must be taken care of. By codifying the Office of Rural Affairs, we will ensure that rural entrepreneurs have a permanent advocate at SBA to help them overcome persistent challenges. We have heard the challenges and we know the gaps. Now it is time to act. I urge my colleagues to vote yes. I yield back my time.
Thank you, Ranking Member. I now recognize myself to speak in support of this legislation for 5 minutes. I rise in support of H.R. 4549, the Office of Rural Affairs Enhancement Act. Rural small businesses face distinct and persistent challenges that often hinder their growth and sustainability. These challenges include a shortage of business assistance resources and limited access to capital. This bill addresses these challenges by clarifying the critical role of the SBA's Office of Rural Affairs in rural entrepreneurship. A recurring theme with the Office of Rural Affairs is that it often goes unused or is ignored at the detriment of many rural communities. At the heart of this bill is a commitment to leadership that understands and prioritizes the rural economy. This bill ensures that the office will be utilized to reach rural entrepreneurs where they are Main Street America. These efforts will strengthen local networks and equip entrepreneurs with the knowledge and support necessary for long-term growth. H.R. 4549 is about investing in the future of rural America, creating jobs, and ensuring resources reach all businesses across America. I urge my colleagues to support this legislation, and I yield back. Does anyone wish to offer an amendment? Seeing none, the question is now on favorably reporting H.R. 4549 to the House. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and H.R. 4549 is agreed to.
Madam Chair,
For what purpose does the gentleman seek recognition?
I request a recorded vote.
A recorded vote has been requested. A roll call vote is ordered pursuant to Committee Rule 13 and House Rule 11. Further proceedings on the bill are postponed. The committee now moves to consideration of H.R. 4495, the SBA Fraud Enforcement Extension Act, introduced by Representatives Downing and Conaway. The clerk will report the bill.
H.R. 4495, a bill to extend the statute
Without
of
objection, H.R. 4495 is considered as read and open for amendment. I now recognize the bill's sponsor, Mr. Downing, for a statement on the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Over the course of the coronavirus pandemic, the Small Business Administration carried out an extensive effort channeling funding to small businesses facing unprecedented economic challenges. In total, during this period, SBA provided over $1.2 trillion in emergency loans and grants to small businesses. Two of these SBA COVID-era programs, the Restaurant Revitalization Fund and the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant, targeted financial assistance towards businesses that rely on confined gathering places and were thus disproportionately harmed by lockdown policies. While COVID-era SBA programs in many cases delivered much-needed aid to small businesses, they were also exploited to an unacceptable degree by criminals seeking to defraud American taxpayers and secure illegitimate loans and grants. According to a 2023 report from the SBA's Office of Inspector General, SBA distributed over $200 billion in potentially fraudulent funds in its COVID-era programs. This level of fraud undermines the integrity of the SBA. It is essential that we track these criminal fraudsters down and hold them accountable. Notably, the statute of limitations for prosecuting fraud for SBA's Restaurant Revitalization Fund and the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant is set to expire in December. If Congress doesn't act, law enforcement will not be able to investigate and prosecute these crimes. This is why I introduced H.R. 4495, the SBA Fraud Enforcement Extension Act. This bill extends the statute of limitations from 5 years to 10 years for fraud with respect to SBA's Restaurant Revitalization Fund and Shuttered Venue Operations Grant. This extension will provide critical time for law enforcement to track down fraudsters and hold them accountable. Moreover, it will establish parity with the statute of limitations for fraud for other SBA COVID-era programs like the Paycheck Protection Program and the Economic Injury Disasters Loan. I'd like to personally thank my colleague and former Air Force veteran, Dr. Conway, for co-leading this legislation with me. The fraudulent spending of federal taxpayer dollars undermines our trust in our government. It is essential that law enforcement is given the proper tools and authority to punish those who subvert the integrity of the SBA and to ensure fraudsters face consequences for their actions. With that, I urge my colleagues to support this legislation, and Madam Chair, I yield my time.
Thank you. I now recognize Mr. Conway for a statement on the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you certainly to my friend and fellow Air Force officer, Troy Downing, for joining me in bringing this important program to account for those parts of the program that didn't work according to the expectations of the American people. American people understood very well how important it is to help during the pandemic, but these are taxpayer dollars, and the American people expect that those taxpayer dollars are going to be spent according to the law, and that those who violate the law should be held to account for those transgressions. More than 30 million small businesses were negatively impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. The federal government quite properly took action in an unprecedented way to ensure that money flowed into our small businesses, which are so important to our economy. And over the course of 18 months, the SBA administered 4 major loan programs and delivered 22 million loans and grants totaling $1.2 trillion. It's estimated, after the SBA undertook its review and issued a report called Protecting the Integrity of Pandemic Relief Programs, and an estimated 1/3 of that $1.2 trillion went to persons who fraudulently obtained them, and businesses who fraudulently obtained them. As of June this year, the Office of Investigator General has opened 31, I would say just 31 investigations related to potential fraud in these programs, by opening 25 cases in the Restaurant Relief Program and 6 open cases in the Shuttered Venue Program. To date, the OIG's efforts have resulted in charges against 25 individuals with 14 criminal convictions and more than $61 million in recovery. However, it remains important for OIG that it has the appropriate amount of time to process these fraudulent claims, and why it's so important that the Congress act to extend the statute of limitations so that the SBA and the OIG can get after these fraudsters who have taken advantage of the largesse and generosity and goodwill of their fellow citizens here in the United States. I would note that in the restaurant revitalization fund, nearly $29 billion was spent in that program. And in the shuttered venues operators grant, about $15 million was spent in that program. We understand small businesses in Jersey. It's nearly half of our jobs are created there. We have tens of thousands of restaurants and hundreds of thousands of small businesses. They're very important to our economy, but all of those people work very hard, and they want their tax dollars spent in a way that meets their expectations for a competent program that is free of fraud. That's the best way, one certainly good way to eliminate fraud and waste in federal spending. So, as has been mentioned, the statute of limitation will be extended, and I only hope that as we look forward in time that we will have enough people there to actually get after all this money and take whatever other steps we need to take to make sure that these fraudulent funds are returned to the federal government so that the people who, through their tax dollars, support them can be confident that we're doing the accountability job we must do here in the government. Thank you again to my colleague, and thank you, Madam Chairman, for allowing this bill to move forward.
Are there any other members who wish to be recognized for a statement on the bill? Seeing none, I would like to now recognize the ranking member to speak on the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I would like to lend my support to the legislation sponsored by Mr. Downing and Dr. Conaway. I commend both of you for working together to extend the statute of limitations from 5 years to 10 years for the additional COVID programs. This bill is a good complement to the one former ranking member Luke Meyer and myself enacted into law for the PPP and EIDL. During the pandemic, the SBA executed 14 years of lending in 14 days to help keep small businesses stay afloat. This program helped millions of small businesses across the country. Unsurprisingly, there was fraud committed by bad actors looking to take advantage of our work to assist entrepreneurs in their time of need. While we may never know the full extent of that fraud, we do know for certain that the majority of that fraud took place in the first 9 months of the pandemic. To combat fraud, the previous administration reinstated the internal controls in the PPP and EIDL programs and put strong upfront controls in place for the RRF and SVOG programs. And for the most part, it worked. Today, the Office of Inspector General's work has resulted in charges against 25 individuals, 14 criminal convictions, and more than $61 million in recoveries. The OIG has 31 open RRF cases and 6 open SVOG cases. While these numbers may seem modest, each case is complex, involving layered transactions, full documentations, and financial concealment. These cases take time to investigate and prosecute, and we owe it to the experts doing the work to give them the tools they need. But I will be remiss if I didn't mention that extending the statute of limitation is only part of the equation. We also need to provide full funding so that they have the resources to root out fraud. And we cannot talk about fraud and then look the other way while the administrator cuts the agency staff by 43%. More than 100 employees were reviewing these cases awards to ensure the money were used in accordance with the terms of the grant. And despite multiple requests for information about staff cuts, we do not know whether SBA retained these employees. Without sufficient funds dedicated to oversight and investigative staff, SBA and the OIG may not be able to fully recover the monies. In closing, I commend Mr. Downing and Mr. Conaway for leading this effort and support the bill. I yield back.
Thank you. I now recognize myself to speak in support of this legislation for 5 minutes. H.R. 4495 is essential to extend the soon-to-expire statute of limitations for two pandemic-era relief programs, Shuttered Venue Operators Grants and Restaurant Revitalization Fund. First, I want to thank my colleagues across the aisle and their staff for working with us to deliver this important piece of legislation. Taxpayer dollars should be protected at all costs. Unfortunately, fraudsters, too many fraudsters, stole COVID relief funds from small businesses across the country. These fraudsters hope that the statute of limitations for their crimes pass, allowing them to skirt justice. We cannot let this happen. This committee is committed to holding fraudsters accountable. Earlier this year, the House passed H.R. 825, the Assisting Small Businesses Not Fraudsters Act. Once passed by the Senate and signed into law, that bill will cut off the ability for the same individuals to have access to the agency that they defrauded. The ranking member led the charge in the 117th Congress to hold fraudsters accountable in the Paycheck Protection Program and COVID Economic Injury Disaster Loans. I'm glad this bipartisan effort will do the same for SVOG and RRF programs. This legislation sends a clear message that the era of taking advantage of the American taxpayer is over. I urge my colleagues to support this legislation, and I yield back. Does anyone wish to offer an amendment? Seeing none, the question is now on favorably reporting H.R. 4495 to the House. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. H.R. 4495 is agreed to. The vote has been requested. A roll call vote is ordered pursuant to Committee Rule 13 and House Rule 11. Further proceedings on the bill are postponed. All right, the committee now moves to consideration of H.R. 4491, the SBA IT Modernization Reporting Act, introduced by Representatives Cisneros and Jack. The clerk will report the bill.
H.R. 4491, a bill to require the administrator...
Without objection, H.R. 4491 is considered as read and open for amendment. I now recognize, is Mr. Cisneros available? Yes. I now recognize the bill sponsors, Mr. Cisneros, for a statement on the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to thank the chairman and the ranking member for the support on this. I am proud this committee can work in a bipartisan manner so that SBA can modernize its IT infrastructure and improve its services to small business. I thank Representative Jack for joining me in introducing this SBA IT Modernization Reporting Act, which will require the SBA to implement 11 recommendations made by the Government Accounting Office to address future IT modernization projects and keep Congress informed of those changes. Billions of dollars in federal contracts are awarded to small businesses every year, and the SBA plays a vital role in promoting small business participation. But over the years, the SBA's outdated and inefficient IT systems have made it harder for entrepreneurs to access the resources they need. A recent GAO report identified critical gaps in the SBA's modernization efforts, from risk management to cybersecurity and budgeting. Going forward, it is important for our small businesses that the SBA follow best practices when modernizing IT systems. My bill directly addresses these issues by requiring the SBA administrator to implement 11 GAO recommendations. It also mandates a clear plan of action and ensures that we in Congress are kept in the loop by ensuring we receive a copy of the implementation plan, a briefing on the plan, and the details and timeline for all actions within the plan. This means better oversight, better execution, and most importantly, better service by the SBA for all small businesses. I worked across the aisle with Rep. Jack to introduce this common sense bipartisan legislation, which shows that modernizing how the SBA works is not a partisan issue. Together, we can ensure that the SBA is prepared to meet the evolving needs of small businesses. I urge my colleagues to support this bill to ensure we give the SBA modern tools it needs to support the success of America's small businesses. And with that, I yield back.
Are there any other members who wish to be recognized for a statement on the bill? Seeing none, I'd like to recognize the ranking member to speak on the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to Representatives Cisneros and Jack for your work on this important bill. After repeated unsuccessful attempts to develop and deploy a platform that will be a one-stop shop for contracting certifications, I asked GAO to review SBA efforts and figure out why they failed. An efficient and fully operational IT platform is critical for the SBA to conduct the certifications that open the door to the federal marketplace for so many small businesses. While I urge SBA to address the shortcomings GAO identified for the Unified Certification Platform, I appreciate that today's bill addresses the underlying issue that GAO highlighted. SBA does not have the processes and procedures in place that should govern any IT modernization project. Failing to use best practices to manage risk, costs, and security wastes taxpayers' dollars and puts the information small businesses have provided to SBA at risk. The SBA IT Modernization Reporting Act will ensure that the SBA addresses the root causes that lead IT projects to fall behind schedule, increase costs, or outright fail. Again, I appreciate the leadership of our contracting subcommittee ranking member, Representative Cisneros, to move this bill. It strikes the right balance of providing SBA with sufficient flexibility to make necessary changes while holding them accountable through smart congressional oversight. I urge all of my colleagues to support it, and I yield back.
Thank you. I now recognize myself to speak in support of this legislation for 5 minutes. I rise in support of H.R. 4491, the SBA IT Modernization Reporting Act. Under the Biden administration, mismanagement at the SBA was an all-time high. This was evident with last year's disastrous overhaul of SBA's contract certification system. This committee raised the alarm over the unorganized plan with no internal controls and guardrails to ensure small businesses don't suffer. While the SBA delayed the launch of the contract certification system for months, they ignored our concerns. The Biden-Harris SBA left a final product with serious flaws, including cybersecurity risks. Late last year, the GAO reviewed these failures and issued a series of recommendations to strengthen the SBA's policies around IT system upgrades. This bill requires the SBA to implement these recommendations and establish a plan for proper safeguards. This will prevent future disruptions and restore trust in the SBA's ability to serve small businesses efficiently and securely. I urge my colleagues to support this legislation, and I yield back. Does anyone wish to offer an amendment? Seeing none, the question is now on favorably reporting H.R. 4491 to the House. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chairs, the ayes have it. H.R. 4491 is agreed to.
Madam Chair.
For what purpose does the gentleman seek recognition?
Madam Chair, I request a recorded vote.
A recorded vote has been requested. A roll call vote is ordered pursuant to Committee Rule 13 and House Rule 11. Further proceedings on the bill are postponed. The committee now moves into consideration of H.R. 3174, the Made in America Manufacturing Finance Act, introduced by Chairman Williams. The clerk will report the bill.
H.R. 3174, a bill to increase loan
Without
limits
objection,
for loans.
H.R. 3174 is considered as read and open for amendment. As designated by Chairman Williams, I now call up an amendment in the nature of a substitute at the desk on his behalf. The amendment has been distributed in advance. The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 3174, offered by Mr. Williams.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and the substitute will be considered as base text for the purposes of further amendment. I now recognize myself for an opening statement on the chairman's bill and the amendment. I am proud to speak about H.R. 3174, the Made in America Manufacturing Finance Act of 2025, or MAMFA for short, a bill that the chairman introduced on May 1st, 2025. H.R. 3174 will increase the loan limit for small manufacturers under the SBA 7A and 504 lending programs from $5 million to $10 million. This bill will provide American manufacturers the capital they need to invest in new technology, as well as hire, grow, and reshore jobs that have been lost. In the last year of President Biden's term, the U.S. lost over 100,000 manufacturing jobs. While this alone is staggering, the decline of the American manufacturing sector did not happen overnight. It is the result of America Last policies that carelessly ship jobs overseas, opening the door for foreign adversaries to fill the void. We must reverse this trend reverse this trend, which will require more than just luck. The ability to manufacture in the United States is vital to our country's economic and national security. President Trump understands this. As part of his administration's priorities, he has been championing pro-growth and pro-American policies that are fueling a domestic manufacturing comeback. I'd like to thank FSGG Chairman Dave Joyce and his staff for working with the committee to provide additional loan authority for small manufacturers to account for H.R. 3174 in the FSGG bill approved by the subcommittee yesterday. H.R. 3174 is essential to keep pace with demand for capital and bringing jobs back to the United States. That is why SBA Administrator Loeffler and manufacturing and lending stakeholders have come out in support of this bill. Some on the other side of the aisle plan to oppose this bill, claiming that it will add risk to the SBA's loan portfolio. But the truth is that SBA's modeling shows that the 7A loan fee structure would actually return more fees to the SBA and help ensure the programs remains zero subsidized, costing the taxpayers nothing. The chairman has worked very hard on this legislation and wishes he could be here to speak in support of it. I urge my colleagues to support H.R. 3174, a crucial piece of legislation that will support small businesses and revitalize the American manufacturing base. I now recognize the ranking member to speak on the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of my long-standing legislative priorities for modernizing the 504 program raises the 504 loan limit for small manufacturers. But more can be done, and I look forward to continuing discussions to further strengthen the program. Turning to 7A, last Congress, we heard concern from our colleagues on the other side of the aisle about rising default rates. I share those anxieties and have since been working to better understand the situation. But apparently, we are dismissing the default rates and just ignoring all the data we have worked diligently to collect. I would like to reach an agreement, but it will take more time and more evidence to ensure we are protecting the program and taxpayers. I am committed to continuing our discussions to make thoughtful modifications after additional briefings with the agency. But let me just lay out some concerns with the text as drafted. Perhaps most frustrating is the fact that there is no evidence to demonstrate that the 7A loan limit needs to be increased. In fact, SBA data shows the opposite. There is greater demand for manufacturing loans of $1 million and less than there is for loans greater than $3 million. Since 2023, there has been over 6,300 manufacturing loans worth $1 million or less, but only 362 loans worth more than $3 million. Maybe there could be a demand now that we have erratic tariff policies harming domestic manufacturers. Unfortunately, we do not know what the need is, nor evidence that manufacturers cannot access financing in our conventional markets required by the credit elsewhere test. This remains amongst the question I need answer from SBA. And I recognize the loan limits having been increased since 2010 and admit there is a conversation to be had on that topic. However, neither the SBA nor the majority have justified in any way how they arrived at the $10 million limit. Instead, this number just seems to be plucked out of thin air and well beyond the adjustment for inflation. More importantly, raising the loan limits does not happen in a vacuum. Defaults have increased annually for the last 3 years and stands at 3.7%. More alarming, the 7A loans originated to manufacturers have the second highest percentage of defaults in the program. And I want to repeat that. More alarming, 7A loans originated to manufacturers have the second highest percentage of defaults in the program. The 7A program is zero subsidy, but when defaults are rising, like they are now, the SBA spent more taxpayer money to reimburse lenders for losses, threatening the program's ability to pay for itself and necessitating additional congressional spending. We are on track to reach the overall program cap for the 7A program, and my fear is that increasing the loan limit for manufacturers risks allowing this loan to use up a disproportionate share of the lending authority, which could result in fewer small dollar loans. I recognize that the House FSGG Appropriations Bill proposes an increase to the 7A cap, and I appreciate Mr. Williams' efforts on this point. But that is just the first step in a lengthy appropriation process, and there is no guarantee if there will be an increase at all. I remain committed to working together to find agreement on raising small business loan for manufacturers, but must be done in a responsible way and not at the expense of the program's integrity. Chairman Williams and I have agreed to continue working together on this measure and in an effort to make the bill as strong as possible. With that, I yield back.
Thank you. Are there any other members who wish to be recognized for a statement on the bill? Does anyone wish to offer an amendment? Seeing none, the question now occurs on the adoption of the substitute amendment offered to H.R. 3174. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 3174 is adopted. The question is now on favorably reporting H.R. 3174 as amended to the House. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. H.R. 3174 as amended is adopted and will be reported favorably to the House. The committee will stand in recess, subject to the call of the chair. Members, please return at 11 p.m. to resume consideration of the bills. 11 a.m. to resume consideration of the bills on which roll call votes were requested and postponed.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
The committee will come to order. The committee will resume consideration of the bills on which roll call votes were requested and postponed. We will start with H.R. 2066. The question now is on adopting H.R. 2066 as amended and ordering it favorably to the House. The clerk will open the vote. Are there any other members who have not voted or wish to change their vote? If not, the clerk will close the vote. The clerk will report.
Mr. Chairman, on this vote, the ayes are 23 and the noes are 0.
The motion is agreed to and H.R. 2066 as amended is adopted and will be reported favorably to the House. The question now is on adopting H.R. 4549 and ordering it favorably to the House. The clerk will open the vote. Are there any other members who have not voted or wish to change their vote? If not, the clerk will close the vote. The clerk will report.
Mr. Chairman, on this vote, the ayes are 23 and the noes are 0.
The motion is agreed to and H.R. 4549 is adopted and will be reported favorably to the House. The question now is on adopting H.R. 4495 and ordering it favorably to the House. The clerk will open the vote. Are there any other members who have not voted or wish to change their vote? If not, the clerk will close the vote. The clerk will report.
Mr. Chairman, on this vote, the ayes are 23 and the noes are 0.
The motion is agreed to and H.R. 4495 is adopted and will be reported favorably to the House. The question now is on adopting H.R. 4491 and ordering it favorably to the House. The clerk will open the vote. That's it, right?
Yeah, we're good.
Are there any other members who have not voted or wish to change their vote? If not, the clerk will close the vote. The clerk will report.
Mr. Chairman, on this vote, the ayes are 23 and the noes are 0.
The motion is agreed to and H.R. 4491 is adopted and will be reported favorably to the House. Without objection, the committee staff is authorized to make technical and conforming changes, and members have 2 business days to file additional supplemental dissenting and minority views. I want to thank all of you for being here today. If there's no further business, this concludes today's markup. Without objection, the committee stands adjourned.